Hello and welcome to Symbols and Cynicism, a podcast where we talk about all of the things I love, some of the things that I hate, and this wacky adventure that we call life. My name is Bob, I'm your host, and I'm glad you're here today as we talk Adventures in Middle School Band with Rachel J Maxwell and Roundabouts. Let's get started. Welcome back to today's episode. We'll get to Rachel J Maxwell in a little bit for a wonderful interview. We do have some business to clean up first that I want to get to. Got a little bit of fan mail the listener sends. I am new to podcast listening. Yours is my first real podcast to listen to, and I'd like some more ideas. What are your favorite podcasts? Well, first of all, first real podcast. So have you been listening to some imaginary podcasts or anyway? It's an honor. We are your first. Awesome. Love it. And I'm not been listening to podcasts forever. Fairly new probably to the world of podcasting, listening even. But let me give you some ideas and thoughts and shows that I've loved listening to. If you're into Star Wars, my favorite Star Wars podcast is called Dark Side Divas. Now, warning, it is explicit. It is language, content. Yes, they give a ton of great Star Wars facts and a lot of their opinions, some of which I agree with and some of which I don't, but it is laden with topics and content that are definitely, they've definitely earned their explicit label. So there's that. Number two, I listen to a podcast, one of my favorites right now. It's called Dear Hank and John. Hank and John are the Green brothers. You probably know John Green. He's written a number of novels like The Anthropocene Reviewed, Turtles All the Way Down, Looking for Alaska, The Fault in Our Stars, etc. So that's John Green. His brother Hank is more of a scientist, so they come at things from two different perspectives, and they just answer questions. It's an advice podcast. Some of it's dubious advice, some of it's very serious. It's comedic, and it goes way back. It's a current podcast. It goes way back. I started at episode 1 and I'm working my way through. I'm still about 6 years behind, but it's funny. Nothing is really linked. There are some running gags and jokes and things, but it's not really something you can jump in anywhere. If you wanted to start with this week's episode, you would probably be fine. Another one is the Enthusiasm Project with Tom Buck. He talks a lot of audio gear, visual gear. It's kind of a gear type podcast for the audio visual people. But it's light, it's fun. He talks about a lot of just uplifting things along the way. So that's a really good one. And he is also great on YouTube. I've mentioned his name before. He was my go-to, especially early on with finding cameras that work and microphones and how to get started with podcasting. So he's been a great resource for me. How about The Bourbon Pursuit? Matt and I have mentioned The Bourbon Pursuit on a number of occasions. It is a bourbon-centered podcast. They interview different tasters and distillers from all over the place, different manufacturers and things. They have now started their own line of bourbon. I have not kept up with this one all the way, but when I listen to it, it's great. So if you're into bourbon, that is basically a bourbon-only podcast. Another one fairly new. It's a couple years old, but it's going strong. It's called Happy Not Satisfied with Dan Morrison. Dan Morrison is the former band director at Ronald Reagan High School in Texas. They did Macy's when he was there. They, I think, won Bands of America Grand Nationals while he was there. They won Texas State. They marched in Macy's. So big time program, and he was a big time director, got out of it doing some other things now. And one of those things is he started a company called Happy Not Satisfied. And I love this concept. It was his motto when he was teaching at Reagan. And the idea is you are supposed to be happy with where you are in your journey, but not satisfied with where you're going. And he has this love of an idea that if you think I'll be happy when, you're never going to be happy. When I win the trophy, when I get the promotion, when I get the new job, when I find a husband or wife, when I, you're never going to be, because there's always a higher mountain. So be happy with who you are and where you are now. Meanwhile, being not satisfied with where you want to be 6 months or a year or whatever time from now. And he discusses and interviews all sorts of folks in that podcast around this concept of happy, not satisfied. Next one, Lightning Bugs with Ben Folds. This is no longer in production, but it was a great podcast. It is still on Spotify. I just looked it up before hopping on here, so it is there, but it's ended, so you only listen to old episodes. And Ben Folds, some of you might remember him from 20 or so years ago. He had a group called the Ben Folds Five. They were a pop group, sort of acoustic piano, slight jazz. I don't know how to describe it. He is still touring with his piano. I think his concerts are called like Ben Folds and a Piano or something like that. Great show. I've seen it. Ben is a piano player and just really smart guy. And he interviews all sorts of people about creativity. What does creativity mean in their line of work? And he interviews musicians and painters and scientists and anthropologists and writers and just all sorts of people. The point being, creativity is everywhere, and it's about being creative and the creative mind. So highly suggested on that one. And the last one I'll give you is, again, it's not in production anymore because actually he passed away. It's called Bob Saget's Here For You. And of course, Bob Saget passed away a couple of years ago, but there's plenty of episodes of this out there. He started this during COVID. He needed something to do. You might remember Bob Saget if you're my age or maybe even a little younger. He was the dad in Full House, the comedy sitcom on television. And lots of people only know him from that, where he was like all-American dad, straight up good guy, loves his daughters, loves his family, sort of taking care of family life sort of thing. And if you don't know his stand-up comedy, then be warned before you look up this podcast. Bob Saget's stand-up comedy before he got into Full House and after, very blue, very dark, lots of, explicit content, warnings, dirty jokes, language, etc. And so there's some of that bleeds into this podcast. This is not the Full House Dad podcast. So just warning, I'm not sure it has an explicit label on it, but just a warning, if you're not into that sort of thing, you might want to stay away from Bob Saget's Here For You. It is a good uplifting podcast at its core. So that's my top 7. Of course, Symbols and Cynicism should be everyone's number 1 podcast. Got another question here. How do you so smoothly say all of the Star Wars names time and time again with so few mistakes? Well, the answer is simple: editing. I don't say them time and time again. In fact, as I was reading that question, I messed up the words Star Wars. Any podcast you listen to, folks, probably doesn't happen like that the first take. Yes, sometimes instead of Luminara Unduli, I say Luminari Undula, or I put Anakin together with Ahsoka and we get Anoka, or Ashokan, it happens, right? Or I say the wrong Jedi because I'm talking too fast and it happens. So please don't be too impressed. I misspeak all the time and it just happens, but that's why I spend hours editing this thing so that you'll be impressed. So I'm glad you're impressed, but that's not how this works. A few updates to the podcast and some other things. If you're just joining us on the podcast, you notice that we're working our way through Clone Wars. And in order to help you keep up with all of the Star Wars content on the podcast, on our YouTube channel, we've started a Star Wars playlist. I've forgotten to say this the last couple of weeks. If you follow us on social media, you probably saw it there. But on the channel, we now have a playlist devoted just to the Star Wars episodes. So if you're behind on the Star Wars content, you want to catch up, or if you're new to the podcast and you want to go back and check out all of the Star Wars episodes, if you go to the CNC Star Wars Eps playlist on the YouTube channel, you can find them and they'll be all in order from oldest to newest. Look that up on YouTube. Our moniker is Robert H. Sloan, RHS Music. No spaces, just ROBERTHSLOAN, RHSMUSIC. And that will take you right to our YouTube channel. Sid is the logo. All of our podcast episodes are there, but there is a separate playlist for the Star Wars ones. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Helps us out, helps you out. You'll be notified of future updates. And by the way, You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok, all at Symbols and Cynicism, a podcast. On YouTube, already mentioned that, IG and TikTok, we also have all of our RHS music, composition, and arranging information mixed in, but you can parse out what you want. If you don't care about buying concert band, chamber music, and marching band music, ignore the RHS music stuff. If you do, would love for you to check into some of that and look it up. We got a bunch of great music on the website. Today's podcast is sponsored by RHS Music. Aren't they all? Shut up, Sid. Moving on today's show, an awesome discussion with Rachel J. Maxwell. You're going to love it. It was a fantastic conversation. And roundabouts. Let's get going. Roll the tape on Rachel J. Maxwell. All right, welcome to the program. Our next guest, this is Dr. Rachel J. Maxwell. She is a veteran middle school band director at Trauber Junior High School in Oswego, Illinois. Her bands have performed multiple times at Illinois Music Educators Convention. She has presented at the Midwest Clinic. Numerous awards have come her way as recognitions for her band performance and her teaching accolades. Multiple honor band conducting engagements. She's an alum of the Phantom Regiment and recently earned her doctorate degree. On the side, she is also a wife and a mother. How do you fit all of this in? Welcome to the podcast, Dr. Maxwell. What did I miss? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, well, thank you for that great introduction. French horn player, but my horn playing has been set aside a little bit while these other things are going on. The doctor, particularly, my daughter, who's a musician, has been giving me a hard time that I got to pick up that axe, Mom. You're pretty rusty. And I said, you know what? Right now, I'm the world's greatest 8th grade French horn player, and that's fine for now. I'll come back to it. I'll get back into it when I can, when I'm fully recovered from the doctoral process. But, all those things. But a big part of my life, too, is something completely away from music. I'm a horse girl, and I've been that since I was little. And it's a way, and some people, it's funny because the band world doesn't they're like, you're a horse person. And then the horse world is like, you're a band director. And it's just been such a great compliment because when I'm there, barn time is separate. I decompress. I focus on that. It's very therapeutic for me. I have different relationships, different friend groups and such. And so I think that's been a key to staying healthy, mentally and physically healthy with the demands of the band job, is that I have this thing that is completely different and exists in its own little bubble of universe that is very, very, very satisfying to me. And, complements the music world because there's a lot of crossovers in just artistry and working with the horses and competing at that kind of thing. So that's something that people might not know, but that's, if anybody ever wants to reach out and talk about horses, that I can talk about horses as much as I talk about band, which is ad nauseum. So I'm pretty excited about both those things. And my understanding is we're also going to get into a little Star Wars.
We are going to get into some Star Wars.
At some point. I'm a Star Wars person. We'll talk about I have a very particular Star Wars stance, which we will discuss further.
Good.
But, it's the power of the almighty calendar and list making. I live by my calendar and my lists, and especially as I get older, God forbid I don't write something down, because if I write it down, it happens. If it doesn't get written down, it never happened and never existed and never will. So that's my advice to everybody out there. Make lists, write things down. Sticky notes are everywhere, on my desk at school, at my desk at home. And I kind of obsess over that thing, just making sure I'm on top of it. And that has really helped me just, keep your priorities day to day and understand what's this week look like, map it out.
Yeah. And with the horse thing, I assume that is so different from band that there's no way to turn that into a band related thing, right? You have to keep that separate.
Right. Well, and it's awesome because when you're with the animals or riding, it's the only time I really experience a state of flow, even more so physically and mentally, even more so than when I'm in a musical setting, because even as a conductor, especially with younger bands, I'm problem solving and anticipating as I'm conducting, of course. Yeah. Oh, this is coming up. Da, 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 da. Oh, make sure that kid, and I'm thinking about each kid's personality and what they need and what support they need and how I can encourage or help or whatever. Whereas when I'm in my riding lesson or with my horse, there is nothing else in my mind, nothing. And it's really the only place I go where that happens, where that part of my brain just is completely shut off. However, some of my best friends through the barn were people that I initially met through band, and then they happened to also be horse people. And so now that relationship has lasted years and years and years, even though they went into different careers and things, like some former students and that sort of thing. And it's pretty adorable because lots of the kids that ride at the barn, lots and lots of band kids, because they have that same sort of perseverance and work ethic, and are a little competitive, and, you know, they're kind of go-getters because there is work involved. So there's almost every kid at the barn, you know, all these little junior high and high school girls and a couple of boys, they're almost all band kids, which I get a little kick out of, because then they're always like, wait, you're a band director? Because at the barn, I'm, you know, the filter's off, and they're my buddies at the barn. So they don't think of me as like teacher mode, which is kind of fun for me.
Yeah. They let you out of the band room? How
exactly.
Yeah. Well,
exactly.
We've exhausted my knowledge of horses. So we're at the end of that. I know big and 4 legs and a tail. That's it. I'm done.
Okay.
So if that's okay, if it's okay with you, we'll talk about band, because I don't know anything else. You'll have to educate me about horses. Not that I don't want to learn, but
sometime we'll have a horse day, and then we can visit each other and do like a horse day, and we'll fill you in, and then we can do a Star Wars day as well. So
I would love to come out and break my neck falling off a horse. I think that would be...
never, ever let that happen. We are very safe. No, that would never happen. So
I appreciate that.
We can shift gears into band, because I'm equally excited to talk shop about that, obviously.
Great. So we met on Facebook, through Facebook. I don't know how we became friends. I think it was something to do with a Phantom Regiment thing, and then I noticed you were also a band director, and I think we connected that way. But I love your posts, the adventures of middle school band. Every couple of days, there's always like a new adventure. And all of those things are like, yes, that's what kids do. It's very just real life. That's not made up. Have you always wanted to teach middle school? Like, take us back to the beginning. And is this something that you always wanted to do?
Absolutely not. Does anybody really want to be a junior high band director? I think most people fall into it and realize, oh, this is magical. This is really special. I certainly didn't realize that when I was an undergrad. My intention was to get a music ed degree because my mother made me, because, thank goodness, right? I wanted to be a very famous French horn player. And so I was all about, you know, the performance element of things. Like you said, I marched in Phantom Regiment, and I was playing at a pretty high level. And so I did the undergrad music ed. However, I took all my lessons through the honors program, so I got extra credit. So I would do the same expectations as, say, the performance majors, because in my brain I was prepping for a master's degree in horn performance and then a career teaching and performing. And the band thing was kind of like, band's fine, but I was an orchestra kid more. I mean, I did band, but I really loved playing in youth orchestra. And then when I was in high school, at the end, I started picking up some subbing gigs in some of the smaller orchestras in like Northern Illinois area, which is a pretty cool thing to happen, you know, like when you're a senior. And so I really thought, you know, I was going to be an orchestral musician and chamber musician. And then, you know, I started like just having some band chops, because I played in a community band in the summer when I was before and after I marched in drum corps in the years prior and after. You know, there was like the weekly reading band that every community has, where you read on Tuesday, you do the concert on Thursday. And my high school director just played all the old staples, you know, all the transcriptions, all the old war horses. And of course, this was, you know, the 80s. So that's all that kind of existed. Right. So I ended up developing some pretty good band chops. And then I had a friend group that was highly motivated about band in college. So I don't want to say indoctrinated. Is that too strong a word? I got like sucked into the band culture and kind of excited about it, but it really wasn't, you know, I was more like, oh yeah, doing competitive marching band camps. And then junior high was not on the radar in any capacity. But then I went and student taught, and I went to a program that's very well known in Illinois, Lincoln Way. And at the time they only had Central and then the East Campus. And the Central Campus was very famous marching band, very successful. Their director had been there for years and years. He was just about to retire, so he was kind of at the end of his tenure and kind of curmudgeon-y and was kind of over it. And I came in, this whippersnapper, and he let me do a ton. He let me get on the podium. But then halfway through the day, every day, I would go over to one of his feeders, and I had just the most delightful, Dana Shoemaker was her name. She was just wonderful. She took me under her wing. She was just such a great mentor and so excited about those kids and beginners and middle school and what they were doing that I started having a lot of fun with that and thinking, oh, this is pretty cool. Like, see them when they're little, because they can do more than people think. And so by the time I was done student teaching, I'd kind of put the performance thing aside and thought, no, I'm definitely going to look for a band gig, and whatever it is, it is. So, when you first come out, then you apply to everything. I just want a job.
Yeah.
And luckily enough, I got a job in the area I wanted to, but it was elementary beginning band, 5th and 6th grade band. And I was thrilled because I wanted a gig, and then that allowed me the time to practice and to do the lessons. And I played in the orchestra that they had in town and a couple chamber groups I had. So when I got the gig, I was thrilled because it also fed into my then fiance. He was the high school director that I would be eventually feeding to. So I got to do a lot of the high school marching band and that sort of thing, and their summer program. And then I did 5th and 6th grade band. And I'll tell you, I think everyone that's going to go teach should do a couple of years of teaching beginners, because that's where you really learn how to be a teacher, like how to work with kiddos and how to communicate with parents without these huge performance stressors on you. Like, we had big concerts and I wanted them to be good quality, but we had, a December concert and a May concert. So, it takes the pressure off because it's more about developing that child. And so for my first job, I had the secondary technique classes, but I certainly wasn't proficient on my instruments. However, I could stay a couple pages ahead of the kids in all my sections, because I had these little sections, it was traditional pull-out lessons and then one full band before school a week kind of thing. And it was exhausting, of course, because I would teach 10 groups of band every day. I'd have 5 before lunch and 5 after lunch, half-hour slots, boom, 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 boom. That's a lot of kids to be excited for every time they came in, but it was such a magnificent teaching opportunity because I got to teach that lesson 10 times a day to figure out how to teach it. I got to play those secondary instruments with them. I got to really teach them how to make the sound. And so I felt like my pedagogical chops really started getting whipped into shape then. And yet I was still around the high school kids to really push, okay, what's good expectations for musicality in a high school level group, that kind of thing with the marching band. Yeah. And so I envisioned that I was going to do that for quite a while. And then a job in the town right next door opened up. And I was talking to the lady, her name was Margene Pappas, and she'd been there for like 25 years. And they had played at Midwest, and she was very renowned. She's like the OG of junior high band in the state. Super old school, but super effective. And a friend of mine was trying to move to the area. So I was asking her all about the job. Like, what does it entail? And we were discussing it. And she said to me finally, why don't you apply for the job? And I said, well, I have a job I like. And she says, well, why don't you apply? I'd like you to come in and talk to me. Well, I went in and talked to her, and then I took the job, and we hit it off right away, and we had a lot of same philosophy. And so then I moved over to Oswego, and I lived in the town right next door. And for the first several years, there was 3 directors and 3 buildings, and we team taught everything. So we would do our beginners at one building in 3 spaces, all the kids at once. One person would have woodwinds, brass, percussion, and I'll talk about that more in a minute. Then we would drive over to the other junior high, do the beginners. Then I would do the 7-8 band at my home school. The other director would do theirs. And then we'd all meet at the high school, where I would do like the second band, and she would do the first band in the same time frame in different rooms. And then during marching band season, we were all together. So as far as vertical alignment, it was amazing because we were together all day. We were discussing everything, like what are the kids not getting? What do we need to change? How do we align things? How do we use the same language? All those things. And I was watching and with her all day, this really magnificent seasoned teacher. And I was just like a sponge, whatever she said, I went with it. And, I had questions and discussions, and I had my own ideas, which might have drove her kind of crazy, I think, at times, because I came in kind of hot. But that was just a brilliant way to really understand and develop a philosophy and really take what she had done and then eventually over time make it my own. So as the program then grew and took off, eventually they hired a different person to be her assistant at the high school. So then I was teaming with the other person at junior high, and we were sharing, back and forth, we were teaming together. And then over time, eventually I was at my building full time. And then I eventually had an assistant, and then that person eventually became full time. And for about the last, I'd say 15, 16 years, it's been two of us team teaching at Schraber all day. So I took the job as a half middle school, half high school gig, and really enjoyed the high school part of it. But as we developed the program, I just really locked in with that middle school level. And part of it was because I did my own beginners. Once I did that, I did not want anyone else starting my kids. And I have very, very strong feelings about how it should be done and what I expect and how I want them ready for, 7th and 8th grade and then high school band. And the fact that I could start my own kids, have them at middle school, and then send them over to her it's ideal. Ideal for me, it was.
Sure. Yeah. So it sounds like it kind of evolved over time into this. You never wanted to be the middle school band goddess, but here you are. You've evolved into it, and would you go back and do it differently if you had to do it all over again?
Okay. Now this is here's a very controversial statement. I probably would have moved to Texas right away after college and got into their system, but in a similar way. Like I would have stayed at the middle, a lot of their directors do that where they're at the middle school and they're doing the marching band or whatever. And then they kind of move through their own system. Yep. And when I got here, we idealized really the Texas system of doing things. And our goal has always kind of been, what can we do here, get as close to that Texas system with the parameters and the schedule and the students and the budget and the staffing that we have? What can we take from them that works so well and apply it into our own system? And so we've really tried to steal as much as we can. So I think in Illinois, we have much better teaching contracts and retirement systems. So that kind of worked out for me, in the long run.
Right.
But I think just that satisfaction of the levels, and I know it's not like that everywhere down in Texas. I've done several site visits down there, but I really enjoy the culture down there of how seriously they take the pedagogy of their beginners and how they really realize that the beginning determines the end. And if we don't have those really fine teachers really digging in and understanding those kiddos right at the beginning, if we don't have those really sound foundations, that really deep understanding in the kids of what the goals of the program are, you're never going to create these extremely proficient, extremely musical high school and beyond groups. And I love that about the culture in Texas. That is one thing I love about that.
Well, and when you talk about beginners, and I always taught beginners too. And when at the beginning of my career, I hated it. And it wasn't them, it was me. I was so deficient in so many skills that I felt inadequate. And so therefore you hate the things you're not good at. Over time, I started to really love it, enjoy it. And when it became a team teaching too, where I could focus on like brass and percussion and not have to worry about the woodwinds as much, because that was the height of my deficiency, was in the woodwind realms.
Oh yeah. I'm in that club. I get you. Yeah.
But like you said, like we spent so much time with, here's how you open your case. Here's how you're going to handle the mouthpiece. Here's how you're going to, and tone production. And so why does your high school band play so well? Well, because we make our beginner. Yeah, sure. They're only playing 5 notes maybe, but try to make them sound good. Don't just be happy that they're like getting a note and throw a party. Sure, that sometimes is a party because they are beginners, right? And they're 100%.
Little.
But there's no reason they can't play hot cross buns with good tone and good breast support and tongue.
100%. You nailed it. And, obviously with the appropriate level and the appropriate scaffolding, et cetera. But the philosophy has always been with myself and my colleagues that I started with here in Oswego was the performance level should be the same with every ensemble, 6 through 12. The thing that changes is the rigor or the demand of the music. And so we wanted to get those kids playing with characteristic tone as soon as possible, really having a strong foundation in, like you said, their breath support, their counting, their ability to to read and interpret their music, their literacy. All those things have to be mastered. Like, they don't suddenly become good when they get to high school. I mean, I talked to the kids about that too. I said, guys, people don't suddenly get good when they get recruited for college at baseball. They're good when they're 8, you know, and then they're good when they're 9 and 10 because they've got a coach showing them the correct stance, the correct grip, the correct way to use efficient muscles so they're not hurting themselves. You know, we're the same way. We're going to show you the right way to do it. So the world is your choice. If you are casually committed, you're going to sound good and enjoy it. If you do middle school and that's all you're into, let's be good. If you want to do this as a career, you're ready to roll.
Yep.
And just having, you know, and part of it is like control freak, but that comes from wanting the quality to be consistent for the students of what the information they're receiving, the expectation that they're surrounded by, the support that they get. And so I've realized I'm not so much a control freak as much as an expectation and experience shaping freak. Like, I want it a certain way because I know what the result will be for children. Otherwise, I know if things are dropped or gone through the cracks at those beginning stages, sometimes there's no catching up. Sometimes there's no recovery of that. Some kids scrap out of it. They can, but it's few and far between.
But you want every kid to have that foundation from whatever beginning band is, then plus middle school, where, like, if they want to go to college, they've developed the skills that have gotten them to have that ability. And if they get to halfway through high school and be like, hey, I'm cool with being, 15th chair clarinet, that's great too.
That's fine. That's fine.
But you can't start teaching like alternate chromatic fingerings in 11th grade. That doesn't work. They've already built too many bad habits.
Right. Well, and I think of the kids that people like allow to never, for instance, play over the break in middle school, even. And that seems like so basic. Like, we have our beginners over the break on those, yet I'll meet kids at honor bands who are 8th graders who are like, oh, I always play third. I don't know. Well, everybody should have the vocabulary to be successful depending on what they do with it. And it's interesting. Our state is in this heavy career readiness track right now that they're pushing in Illinois, where from the high school down, they want us to identify how our elective coursework matches up with high school tracks that are like college and career readiness tracks.
Yeah.
And initially there was a little freak out among the fine arts teachers about this, like that we would be seen as fluff. And I'm like, no. Every year we have kids who are music majors every single year. A lot of kids from our high school who go on to be music majors. That's their career. So they cannot diminish or reduce our time or our contact or our curriculum if they're legit about this, because we are going to show how what we do with our beginners and our middle school kids is preparing these kids for a career in this field in some capacity. And the more we've aligned what we're doing when saying, yeah, this leads to success at high school, which leads to success at college. It's not the outlier who gets to go. It's any kid who wants this career path. And since we've kind of thought like from that standpoint or from that framework, I think it's made those kind of discussions less threatening to us because we can identify and defend how what we're doing with our 6th grade beginners is a career readiness track for those kids, even as an elective.
Well, and you've got a teenager in your house. I do too. And obviously we've taught a million of them, but look, when I was 12 years old or 14 years old, if you had asked me, what do you want to be? I was going to be an aeronautical engineer. I was going to build airplanes and rocket ships.
Sure.
I got to my senior year of high school and I went, yeah, I don't want to do that anymore. I think I'll go be a band director. So like, how can you look at a middle school kid and say, well, tell me what you're going to be when you grow up? Like,
yes. It makes me a little crazy that everything has to be career checked because, what are the skills kids need? Well, they need to have good literacy skills in general. They need to be good communication. They need to be good collaborators. They need to have executive functioning. Yeah. They need to have mindfulness and self-awareness. And then they can, if they do those things, then they have the ability to learn a lot of things. And, so we have really talked about how we embed those things every single day into what we're doing, along with our content curriculum, our specific content skills and knowledge, how that leads to specific, career opportunities. Yet the things the kids are learning, that collaborative element, that, ability, that cognitive flexibility of, am I the melody? Am I supportive? How do I react? All those things that go into being a musician prepare kids for any career track. And to think that some 8th grader knows what they're going to do, some do, A few do. That's fine.
Sure. Yeah.
But should we really even be pressuring them to know that? I that's a disservice, I think.
I agree. You know, my wife in third grade decided she was going to be an elementary general music teacher because she loved her elementary general music teacher. She never wavered for that for a moment. She's been teaching for 20 something years and as a general music teacher. Like, but I think that's few and far between where like at age 7,
Sure.
you know,
Sure.
We decide that. And then, you know, on top of that, yeah, you're talking about the soft skills and all of that, but like they're also just having fun in band and like, that's good too, right? They're probably not having fun necessarily in math. Like it's okay to just have fun, be a kid.
And even beyond fun, and you know, because I know we're going to talk a little bit about like how do you make it fun. We try to like leave the fun word out of it, and we talk about fulfillment, personal reward, and what we do is very fulfilling when kids invest in it of themselves, and we really train the kids right away from when they're little that. You know how to have your own fun. You know what's fun to you. And fun things aren't always challenging. Sometimes fun things are kicking back, playing a video game, hanging with your friends, watching a movie. They're pretty passive a lot of times. The things that are fulfilling require active participation, analysis, reaction, appropriate decision-making. And those things might not seem easy and fun, but they bring a lot of joy when you do experience them because that cycle of, you know, anxiety, stress, digging in, and then resolution where it arrives and I've done the thing, that joy, that empowerment that brings sometimes gets, you know, and there are fun and funny things that happen, of course.
Sure.
But ultimately, I tell the kids, you know, we're trying to do something better than fun because you can have your own fun. We will have fun, but I don't know that everyone's fulfilled by their math class or their science class or finds every other core class fulfilling. They're going to find fulfillment in some of those, but are they really creating anything that actually means something that's authentic in their other classes? Because we're not sitting around talking about having a concert or creating art. We're, you know, discussing what if we created art? What would it be like to be a musician? We're actually doing the thing and we're creating authentic art that we're trying to share out to not only our own audience as far as parents, but the world. And I mean, I tell the kids, there's adults who go their whole lives and never produce something of beauty that gets shared with the world that anybody else cares about.
Yep.
And yet here we are, you're 11 and we're going to do that. And we're going to make people feel emotions and feel more because of something that you're doing together as a team, as a group. So, I mean, it just bounces right over fun, I think, into just a reward system that is so empowering to kids that once they have that in their soul and they understand, wow, it feels really special to make something beautiful or to make something that's emotional or to make something that's authentically engaging for my audience to listen to, then the empowerment that they have to be a leader in other areas, to be collaborative in other areas, I think is really, it becomes part of it. It knits into their self, you know, into who they are.
Well, you mentioned beauty and fulfillment, and I'm sure you, with your kids as well, I always tried to like, look, the beauty and the fulfillment just doesn't come at the concert a month from now. It can happen on a Tuesday in February.
Oh gosh. And right. Don't we hope it happens every day?
Yeah.
Something.
Yeah. Or at least like twice this week, we want to have a moment that gives us goosebumps.
Right. Or feel like, you guys, we did it. Did you hear that dynamic level or did you hear that blend? Stop. Let's do that again. Did you guys hear how cool that was? And the look on their face when they're like, yep, we did it. That, you know, that pride and that recognition of being able to identify when something's special.
It's that great Jim Valvano speech, right? If every day you laugh, you cry, and whatever the third thing was, like whatever, you know, you've had a good day, right? If you've laughed, 100%. You've cried, and you've thought, you've given a moment of thought. It's the same way in band. If you've felt something that was fast, slow, and beautiful today, then, you know, we've had a day. You know, I think the great thing about this conversation, what I really hope we'd get into, and it just happened naturally, is like, I think if we take off the front end of this conversation being about middle school, the last really 10 minutes could be about the Marine Band, could be about the greatest high school band, Texas band, college band. It could be any band. Any band. And we're trying to create that in middle school with 12-year-olds, but like you said, at appropriate leveled music, right?
Appropriate, yes.
It's the same.
Well, and here's the thing, too. I've spent so much time with middle school kids. What they're experiencing in real time as middle school has value. Their lives don't start counting someday. And it seems like everything in school and life is prepping them for down the road. Like you got to prep now so that later, as a person who's always been looking ahead to what the next thing is, it never comes. Okay.
Yeah.
You never get to that point and you arrive, you're like, I'm here, everything's done. So, and I always think, and all of us have had kids who we've lost students.
Yep.
And so what they experience every day, every year should be the quality of their life should matter as a junior high kid, like as a sixth grader. The art they're experiencing now is meaningful to their life right now. And it's not just preparing them so that they can play well in high school. It matters for them right now today, that they can experience their life and express it in some way that brings them immediate reward right now, immediate fulfillment, immediate connection.
I remember years ago, my son came home from eighth grade and he was upset. And I was like, dude, what's wrong? Dad, I'm so sick of it. I'm like, sick of what? And this was not band related, but he's like, for like every day for like 3 weeks, they've just keep saying to us, like, when you're in high school, like, can't they just let me be an eighth grader? And I thought that was like, boy, big thoughts for a little child, like
that's profound.
But that's exactly what you're saying. Let's just be in the moment. It reminds me, I don't know if you know the name Dan Morrison. He was a band director at Ronald Reagan for a long time in Texas. And he's out of it now. But, his whole thing, and I love his podcast and his whole mantra. I've got the hat. Literally, I have the hat. Happy, not satisfied. Be happy where you are, even though you might not be satisfied with where you want to be someday. And his whole thing is like, I'll be happy when never happens. I'll be happy when I win that award, when I get that degree, when I can play that piece. That never happens, because when you get there, the next thing is always there and you're never happy. Like, be happy where you are.
And it's really it's really the growth. It's really the chase that is the reward, not arriving at. It's just like you want all our rehearsals to be amazing, and the concert, great. But if, we don't want, it's like people who, the concert was good, even though we the kids were maniacs for 6 months and pulled it out of their butt at the concert. Well, no, every day should be that growth, that digging in, that small incremental steps of, growth and fulfillment. That is really where the joy comes in, because once you get there, you're just going to set another goal. And, and I think about how much of a child's life sixth grade takes. It takes like a 12th of their life. Yeah. A year is a long time when you're in sixth grade and seventh grade and eighth grade and ninth grade, where now, I'm 55, a year is just a blip. It just flies. And you think back to your own time in middle school, those years were huge and they stamp you forever. The emotions and the things you love and what you listen to and your friends and the popular music you're into, that stays with you. And so I want them to have experiences that really matter, so that they have that as part of who they are as people. And they know, what, I'm strong. I can do hard things. I can collaborate with people that I don't even necessarily like, but we can still do something together. I can still do something special, even though I don't have a lot of power in the world. In my little bubble, I can make a difference in things. So
yeah, my 12 square feet, right? My 12 square feet.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
So when it comes to middle school kids, we've talked a little bit about recruiting, a little bit about retaining, sort of, mentioned it, and then moving them on to high school. What's sort of challenging about recruiting, retaining, and then moving them forward? Talk to me a little bit about that.
Sure. Well, we're very fortunate about getting kids into our program because we have a great elementary music program, and literally we have 4 elementary schools that come to us. All 4 of those people have band background. One of them went through the Oswego program. I have great relationship with all of them. They're excellent general music teachers, but they also really advocate for and want their kids to come up to us and be part of band and choir and be involved at junior high. So they're always very supportive, and those kids come in excited about it. So we get really good numbers coming in. COVID kicked us in the teeth a little bit with that. We were running out of a class of 300, we were running about 50 to 65% of kids joining band when they came into our building. So we were running 150 to 170 beginners every year. And then since COVID, we've been at about 115 or so. I think our last group has gone through that were sort of our COVID bubble of backing off of things, like less is more in the activity world or whatever, however they think.
Yeah.
And so I think we're going to have a big bump this year, and our retention this year is back to where it was pre-COVID. Not that we were losing a ton of kids, but we were down year to year about 75 to 80%, where before it'd be like 95%, like only a couple kids would drop. And then I'd get probably 75 or 80% going into high school. Lately, it's been about half going to the high school. And, you know, we're just losing more kids than we wanted to. And I think part of it is just family dynamic has changed since COVID. It's sort of become school serves at the convenience of the family's need. And if the family feels the demands of the electives or school is too much, then they're pretty comfortable cutting that out of their kids' lives, and so that it eases up what the family demand is. Or if it's too much having their kid try to do their playing tests every week or get whatever they need done, it's stressful for everybody in the household. I've just seen more families be like, you know what, it's too stressful, we're going to let it go, kind of thing. Or, you know what, they're interested in other things, I'm just going to let them try what they want to try, kind of thing. The path of least resistance a little bit. Mm-hmm. Not to criticize parents, everyone's going through what they need to go through, but we've really lost the parents who are like, you know what, this is good for you. It's what you're going to do because you're a child and you really don't know what's best for yourself. So you're going to do this thing. We don't get that a lot anymore. Not that kids should be forced into band, but I think if parents understand the benefits socially, emotionally, and to children's brain development, there's no way a parent would ever let a child stop making music. But I think we're going through that bubble. Now, high school is where they change buildings. So, you know, when we can get kids and we can keep a lot of kids in our program because it's a one-stop shop. You know, they come in, our sixth graders are our beginners. We keep them 6, 7, 8. It's the same team. You know, so if somebody doesn't sign up, we just go talk to them. We're like, hey, what's going on? You know, no, you're really important to us. And then we keep them. When they change buildings, you know, as the research shows, that's when the drop-off happens. And here's the thing. Sometimes kids are intimidated by successful programs. So our high school has a very successful marching band, jazz band. The wind ensemble's been, you know, goes to Super State every year, which is a big thing in Illinois. They've been the honor band. They get exposed to that top wind ensemble. And I think for some kids, they get a little intimidated by that, and they see the commitment level of those things, and they think, oh, that's a little bit more than I can handle. So not that it's not a welcoming environment, it is, and they do their best of letting the kids know, you know, there's a place for everybody, there's appropriate freshman bands. However, I think when they're exposed to that high level of rigor, sometimes it intimidates the kids a little bit, and they kind of think, well, now's my chance to, I'm going to do something else because I'm not that into this, I'm more casually committed. So sometimes our high school numbers are not what I would like them to be. I'd like to have, like I said, 75, 80% of the kids going on to the high school. And right now we're about 50, 60%. And it's some of our best, brightest kids are the ones not going on because they want to take medical topics. They want to take the engineering class. They want to take Mandarin. They want to take these hard courses that create some conflicts with the band schedule. And unless they're really willing to tell the counselors, no, we need to make this work and do the summer school and things, sometimes those roadblocks get in the way of those more high achiever kids. They kind of are the ones who hit those roadblocks, and I see dropout sometimes, which is concerning, obviously.
I spent so much time educating myself on how scheduling works so that if the counselors weren't willing to have those minute conversations, I could. Yeah. Like I could sit down with the parents and go, I know what they told you at the big meeting with hundreds of people, but what they meant to say was this, you know, there are variables and you can push this off till later when your schedule opens up. And, you know, I mean, plus going to high school is scary for that age. It's a new, like you said, it's a new building. The kids are bigger. The building is probably, you know, bigger,
5 times bigger.
More opportunities. Exactly. There's band camp in the summer. Maybe that's go away. Maybe that's, you know, so it is a intimidating, scary environment. And that's a real easy time to say, you know what, going to do this thing. Or there's just other opportunities, like you said, with engineering or career readiness and, you know, all of that sort of thing that, gosh, how do you battle it? Right.
Right. Well, I have this really nice oboe player in 8th grade right now. Great kid, works really hard, good oboe player. And then she's like, no, I'm not playing at high school. I was like, what are you talking about? She said, I'm going to do Med Topics, which takes up a huge block, and they do an internship over at the area hospital. And it's like, instant death of the band track for kids if they decide they're going to do medical topics.
Yeah.
She's like, I want to be a pediatrician. And I'm like, yes, but if you want to get into medical school, you tell them you do band, and then you'll be smart and get good test scores and be in bands, and they'll take you in. And, and sometimes being the band director, I'm like the used car salesman. If it comes from me, sometimes it's taken with a grain of salt because I have a lot of motivation to want kids to continue,
Sure.
obviously.
Sure.
So I try to provide a lot of sources from, entrance counselors, people who, admissions people at colleges, of like quotes and information and statistics and things. However, families and students get ideas in their head about what track they're going in the high school. And sometimes it's very hard to sway them one way or another if they're not a really devoted band kid. If they're, because a lot of kids casually committed, they like it, it's something they enjoy, but they're not that diehard, bleed band, kind of thing, which is fine. It's fine. So, yeah. So that's something we get concerned about, obviously.
That whole like kids not doing band the following year, no matter what age level it is. People used to ask me, what's the toughest thing about your job, the thing you like least? And I think they wanted me to have to really think about it. Like, oh, geez, I don't know. Man, my answer was so quick. It's like kids quitting band. Like that was easily the worst, the thing that, dagger in the heart.
Yep.
Punch in the gut. Like no matter what the kid is, could have been the last chair, insert instrument here.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter. Yeah, it hurts when it's the first chair too, but like, oh man, always the worst.
Oh, it makes me sick to my stomach still. And people, I read online posts of new teachers saying, how do I deal with this? And everybody says, don't take it personally, let them go. And
good luck.
I take it, it makes my stomach hurt when kids don't go on. And because I think, what need did that kid have that we missed?
Yep.
Like, how did we not meet them where they were and figure out like how to make this rewarding for them? How did I not? Well, it's a return on investment. So the reward, the payoff, the product has to be greater than what their investment of time, energy, money, the payoff has to be bigger. And for some reason it wasn't. And so I try to think about that and think like, how did I not meet the kid? And some kids are going to quit, obviously, no matter what. But when you have a kid who's chugging along and successful, when they don't go on, I really try to figure out, boy, where did we drop the ball on this? How did we not connect with that student somehow?
Yeah, so, you mentioned money. That's a big part of it, the high school too, right? Because there's more band fees, band camp, uniform fees. Maybe you need another, a better instrument if you want to play in the wind ensemble or have a chance at that, et cetera, et cetera. And like there's more fee. It is more of a time commitment. It's more of a monetary commitment.
Oh yeah.
It's a lot of, it's a lot of things.
It's an investment. Yeah, it's a big investment for the family, not just the child. So, and that kind of leads a lot of my planning and preparation and communication with families, because I always feel like I don't want to give any family an excuse to quit band. Like, well, here's another thing we didn't know about, or bad communication, or if I make it being part of band a hassle for a family, there's families that are fine. Like they don't want the hassle.
Right.
So I try to make sure like all the communication is crystal clear. Everything's very transparent. There's no added dates. There's no crazy policies about grades. There's no, I try to be just transparent about things, give the kids every chance to be successful so that it's a place that parents want their kids to be because they're supported and nurtured and encouraged and held to a standard. And we do it in a way that's respectful to families' time and energy.
Sure. Let's talk about specifically playing and that sort of like we're in the classroom with the kids. We've got the kid. They're never going to quit band because they're all amazing children and they're all shiny and have the best quality instruments. What are some like must-haves or non-negotiables as we go through a year that like these are the things you or your staff are not going to bend on, that you want to make sure they get it before they move on to the next grade level or high school or whatever?
Okay, well, and it's simple, but if you can't get your kids to sit correctly and hold their instrument correctly, nothing else will ever happen effectively, period. And I tell my music ed classes that at the place I teach, adjunct Elmhurst University, that you have to have enough willpower and ability to influence the environment so that every student, the reward of sitting correctly outweighs the discomfort that you're going to experience by doing something incorrectly. And, doing it in a way that doesn't feel punitive, but literally, I mean, we do not allow somebody, even for a second, to not be sitting on the edge of their seat, posture correct, feet flat, no part of your body touches another part of your body while you're playing, pads of the fingers on the instrument, embouchure set. Your stand and your station must be set up correctly before we allow anyone to start rehearsal. And those might seem fussy, but it really goes down to how you do anything is how you do everything. And we're going to do it right. Mm-hmm. And, we say to the kids all the time, we do things one way here, the right way. And whether it's how we set up our stand or how we produce a tone, we're going to do it correctly. So if anybody walked in, they'd be like, wow, that's textbook. Mm-hmm. Look at those finger positions, look at that embouchure, look at that posture. They could put any student in front of another class of beginners and they would be the model. And so it starts with just your approach to that. It's going to be correct. And, it takes some kids a while to work out the sillies of like when they, and not to say that they won't make mistakes. And we really try to build in that mistakes happen, but we want to learn how to be how do you recover and act? And some things are funny and we laugh about it, whatever, but we're never going to think or find doing things wrong are never going to be funny for us. And we try to build that in immediately, that there's like, we're going to have fun with inside jokes and little stories about the songs and nicknames for each other and side things happening and little funny things we have on our desk. But playing poorly or doing something wrong, we're never going to let that be funny, because that's our curriculum. That's our core, is those concepts of how you approach the instrument. Then going right away, tone quality. I mean, tone quality. We are on it constantly. Make the most beautiful sound you can produce, and then support how that happens. What are we telling them? Making sure we're telling them correct things about embouchure, making sure we're doing read checks. We do read checks and read rotations, making sure everybody's on decent equipment, checking that those instruments are clean, and the amount of self-discipline it takes for us to stay on that schedule, and the little notes we write ourselves and stickies we put on in our little plan book to make ourselves do those things is tremendous. But if it matters, then we have to make it matter every single day and every single rehearsal. So as far as playing, kids have to play with a beautiful characteristic tone, and we're going to work on it until that happens. And that's should be happening pretty quickly. I'd say by about the December mark with sixth grade, because we see our kids every day for 40 minutes for a full period for sixth grade beginners. Then the next thing is they have to articulate. If we don't teach articulation, they're done. They'll never get out of, like the bottom band at the high school. They'll never make progress. They'll never be able to play a higher part. They'll never sound good. So articulation, we really get on them about how are you using your tongue? What exactly are you doing, so that they really understand how to do it. Music literacy is a huge thing. They have to be able to read and understand what's in front of them. So we spend a lot of time with, little written theory worksheets. We annotate every piece of music so that everything on the page is identified and marked. We have like an annotation form we use where when they get a new piece of music, they know name on top, number the measures, identify the key, find all the notes, make sure I know every fingering. Then they have to look for all the accidentals, circle them, look them up. They have a whole system that they do. Mm-hmm. So literacy is critical. Rhythmic stability and understanding and ability to subdivide. That's the other thing that we want them to know. And then within all those things, they have to know how to play in blend with their section, that they have to match their trio. They have to play as a blended section. They have to know how to balance their part, because they have to know at any given point in the music, am I the melody, the bass line, the counter melody, or a harmony or a harmonic rhythm? And we expect the kids to know at any note in the music which role you have and who has the other roles. And that's something like we stop and talk about that constantly. And they write in their music, like put a star if you're the melody. If you're not, who is? And they have to write in their music, flutes here or whatever it is. And we do a lot of mixing. We tell them we're like the producers, behind the soundboard. If it says forte on your end, well, we have to adjust everything, and we all have to be aware of how are we going to mix that so that to the listener, they can hear those 4 parts transparently? So, so I'm not really worried. We have curriculum as far as what notes and rhythms and what scales and all those kind of things. But if they get those big concepts of tone, articulation, rhythmic understanding, and execution, how to blend and what their role is in the music, it kind of leads to a lot of success no matter what we put in front of them. And that literacy element, of course, as well. So some years the groups could play grade 4s before they walk out the door. Other years we're at easy grade 3s while they walk out the door, but they're going to, whatever level it's going to be, they're going to master all those things I just talked about.
Yeah, and I think the beautiful thing, and not to like reiterate the thing, but you're starting these concepts on day 1 of open the case, sit up straight while you do it.
Oh, yes.
Right. You're not waiting till the middle of 8th grade. Oh, by the way, guys, we should sit up straight and put our thumb in the right spot on the trumpet or whatever, right?
Right. Like we're on it from day, like we make them sit down on the floor and put all their cases lined up the same way, open them the same way. Okay, now everybody take out your mouthpiece. Here's how you hold it with 2 fingers and your thumb. Everybody show me that you can do that. Show your neighbor. I mean, we build in checkpoints of mastery of every single element. So then there's no other way to do it.
Right.
And if they do it another way, I literally just have to like give them the eyeball across the room and they know and they fix it. They know. I'll look at them and I'll just be like, I'll just make a hand position and look at them and they're like, yeah, okay, got it. Or I just look at their feet and they fix their feet, so, but then as they get older, I tell them, if you have that discipline and that control, inside of that, we can have a lot of freedom to be artistic.
Yeah.
But, art doesn't come out of chaos. And beauty doesn't come out of chaos. That's a myth. Creativity does not emerge out of chaos. Creativity comes out of what can you do effectively out of these constraints you're given. And so we try to make the structure really, really foundation. And I think that creates a lot of, I guess, just stability and comfort for kids that they know every day, here's what the expectation is. And so we have a lot of success with our high-end kids, but we have a lot of success with our special ed kids and our kids who need additional supports and have, IEPs, 504s, because that structure is all their IEP is.
Right.
And we provide that to everybody. So
routine. That's what they need, right?
Yep. Routine. I mean, today the kids about lost their minds because we have a percussion teacher in town who has a really nice studio, and he had a friend in town from Lithuania who has studied African drumming extensively, and they had traveled together, and he's a really nice guy. And he had reached out to me and said, can I bring him in with all of our hand drums and our African drums and do a special thing? I said, absolutely. So we had it set up for this afternoon for the 6th grade classes. And as the kids came down the hall, they're lining up how we normally have them do. And I said, put everything down on the ground. We're going in the choir room. Why are we going to the choir room? What are we doing? What's happening? I'm like, we're doing a drum circle today. Why are we doing a drum circle? Who is this? Why are we doing this? What is happening? Are we going to play our instruments? And I'm like, nope, today we're doing something different. And it was like such a novelty, but I was thinking, well, that's like just a fun, like, hey, we're doing so great on our concert music. Let's go do this. We have a visitor today. Let's go do this hand drumming thing because we're fine on our music. So let's do this thing where we don't have to be quite so strict and quite so uptight about it. And you guys can, but those 2 guys said to us at the end of the class, they're like, those kids are really well trained because they responded so fast to all the instructions we gave and the rhythms. They picked them up right away and they were able to do the different techniques right away. So then it creates a lot of freedom if they have a standard on how they approach things. Well, and we saw that today.
And that experience was fun and fulfilling, and they had all the things right there, right?
100%. And it was a kind of a novelty, like, hey, we're going to do this crazy different thing today. Yeah. And they're like, oh, wow, just a special little treat. Like, let's do this different, and then we'll go back to the normal routine next week because we've got a concert.
And I'll guarantee you 6 years from now, you're going to go to some kid's graduation party, and they're going to go, hey, do you remember that day when we, and that's the day they're going to talk about, right? Like,
right. We did the drumming, and exactly.
I'm also looking down, I'm looking down the list as I was taking notes, like, thinking about any high school band. I don't think there's one high school band director in this country who, if kids walked in from 8th grade being able to sit upright, hold their instruments correctly with a culture of respect for sounds and those around them, great tone quality, articulation, music, notation literacy, able to balance, blend, and that is a high school band director's dream list.
Well, and we've been pretty lucky. I mean, the high school directors are very grateful for those freshmen we send over. And of course, there's a wide variety of kiddos who,
Oh.
they get over there. The language is a little different that they
Right.
use, so they freak out and they're like, I've never heard of 6/8. And I'm like, yes, you have, and they'll be like, have you guys never done compound time? I'm like, yes, they're just freaking out because you guys might use different words
Right.
exactly than we do and stuff.
Right.
However, the core is there to grow and build whatever they want to with those kiddos. They're ready to roll.
And not that I've always been a huge believer that it is not the purpose of middle school band to feed a high school band. Like, the purpose of middle school band is middle school band.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
A purpose is to get them to high school, just like high school is to get them into life of music making, whether it's college, music major, not music major, or playing in their community band someday. But so I don't mean to go down that road like your purpose is to get them to high school. It's not.
No, but it does break my heart when they don't play at high school, because I can see, literally, it's like I can see a vision in front of me of their path if they kept playing, and the opportunities and the friendships and the relationships,
right,
and the things they could experience if they continue with it. And it's almost like a door closes and the path that they're going to take when they don't take that option. That road is closed forever.
Yeah, it shrinks.
And that breaks my heart.
Well, and the level of music they can do, and the experience and the trips and the football friendships, and marching band is a totally different animal than middle school band. There's so much value in pageantry and the marching arts and all of that. So I want to thank Rachel for her time today. We'll have the rest of this conversation next week. And yes, it is okay to listen to all of that again with a pencil and a paper this time so that you can take notes.
No, breathe. Find your happy place.
Roundabouts. Do you have roundabouts in your town? Do people know how to drive in the roundabouts? If the answer to both of those questions is yes, then please message the show. Tell me where you live and the name of a local realtor, because I would love to move to your town. Roundabouts are wonderful inventions, and they are not difficult. Traffic moves counterclockwise, yield on the way in, keep driving around, and exit as needed without yielding. You don't stop before you go in. You don't stop while you're in the roundabout. You don't stop before exiting. Okay, if there is heavy traffic in the roundabout, then you should stop before entering, because you do have to yield to those people, but not all the time. You don't always stop. This is the beauty of the roundabout, people. It is faster because you don't have to stop. You flow in, go to the right, counterclockwise as far as you need to go, and zoom back out. Just go. Just go. I feel better. You feel better? I feel better today. I do. That helped. Thank you. Okay, homework for the week. It is nearly March, and that means very likely in your corner of the world, wherever that is, especially if it's America, there is probably a high school band concert, high school choir concert, elementary music concert, or musical, however they frame that, or maybe a high school musical, some musical production happening in March at a school near you. So seek that out and attend. Most of them will be free. And if they're not free, they're a few dollars. It's cheap. Then pay the few dollars, donate to that music group, and enjoy. Sit in the back, sit in the front, wherever. Clap when appropriate. Enjoy the music. Put your phone away and enjoy. Maybe take a picture right at the beginning or right at the end so you can post your social media. Hey, had a great time tonight at the XYZ high school band concert or choir or whatever it is concert. Orchestra. Maybe the concert is riddled with mistakes and they just sound terrible. Maybe they're spot on perfect and you have a brilliant musical experience. But either way, chances are they love to play for people and you are people. So they'll be glad you're there. So that's the homework. Spend a few hours at a concert sometime in the next few weeks to help support school arts in your community. Okay, that's the show. Make sure you leave a rating, drop a comment, or send a message on the app of your choice. You can text the show with a link at the bottom of the description. Check out our merch store at themarchingarts.com/RHS. We hope you'll join us next week for part 2 of our discussion of Adventures in Middle School Band with Rachel J. Maxwell. We'll also preview our baseball movie bracket with a new friend and look at what you're wearing. Thanks for joining me today. The theme music is Superfly, written by me, copyright RHS Music. The show logo is designed by John Suh, and the show is produced by my sister, Kathy. I hope you'll join us next time for more reflections and rantings on symbols and cynicism.